The real reason Israel is attacking Palestine. Let's get into it. In the last few days, I've been bombarded with videos and stories about what's happening in Palestine and Israel. If you let the Western propaganda media tell it, they'll tell you it's Hamas firing rockets into Israel. You know, the same old propaganda bullshit. This isn't surprising, as Israel's grip on the Western media is firm, as is the support among Americans and Westerners in general, including the religious fundamentalists like the evil evangelical Christians. Joe Biden, a longtime Israel puppet, vowed to send military aid to Israel. There's a reason why war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is yet again attacking Palestine. First of all, he has a history of committing war crimes in Palestine and among Palestinians. The International Criminal Court won't do anything because they're selective in who they prosecute, namely those of the developing countries, and the US, like a lapdog, vetoes any UN resolutions condemning Israel and its terrorism against Palestine and the Palestinian people. If you remember earlier this year, around March and April, Israel was making international headlines. These headlines centered around Netanyahu pushing highly unpopular and detestable policies that moved the state toward a more fascist and far-right society. He sought to implement judicial reforms that would allow him and his hardline authoritarian regime to assume more power, including over the Israeli courts. As a result of this, many Israelis took to the streets in massive protests. These protests have lasted for months and have not stopped. That's one main reason. As if that wasn't enough, Netanyahu himself has recently been having legal troubles. He's been indicted on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. He could be doing up to 10 years in prison if he's convicted. Former Army Chief Benny Gantz, who is a political rival of Netanyahu, accurately pointed out that Netanyahu, quote, will make decisions in his own personal interest and for his political survival and not in the national interest, end quote. That's a second reason why Netanyahu attacked and initiated a war against Palestine and Hamas. You have to also consider that when there is a war in any country, take the United States for example, criticism of policies or even the figurehead themselves, in this case Netanyahu, rarely takes place. Look at Bush during the Iraq and Afghan invasions. Very few Americans dare to criticize Bush, his regime, or his policies. So what this does is cuck the left in Israel and those who oppose Netanyahu's far-right policies, and prevents them from criticizing the authoritarian policies he introduced earlier this year. So those two reasons: one, he sought judicial reform that became so unpopular that Israelis have protested in the streets for months, and two, he himself is indicted on a variety of charges, including bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. And when you have a war, like I mentioned, very few people, when there's an ongoing war, very few people are bold or courageous enough to criticize the figurehead who's leading the war. I just mentioned Bush during the Iraq and Afghan invasions. Now it's going to be with Netanyahu. People in Israel are going to be afraid to criticize Netanyahu and his policies, just like it was during the Iraq and Afghan invasions here in the United States. So those are the reasons, real reasons, why Israel is attacking Palestine and why Netanyahu, a war criminal, is bombing Palestine and initiated this war against Palestine and the Palestinians and against Hamas. That's what I think. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel. This channel is growing thanks to you guys. Leave a like. That helps with the algorithm so that more people can interact with you guys and grow the community. Take care.